The question was about Pocatello plant, and the answer was that it was a naval armaments plant and was purchased by Bucyrus and converted to, it had a big long bay that we could run the dragline parts down through and stuff like that and fit them and move them out of there. So, but that was the ideal of that plant, and we had developed the 2570W, which was a 100-yard walking drag line, and that was the primary facility to build those at. So it lasted, I'm thinking 5, 6, 7 years, something like that, but not all that long.
Was there a lot of coal out there, or what were they doing out there?
Manufacturing is mainly what it was used for. Most of the coal at that point was still back here in the Midwest. Wyoming and Colorado was just starting to come on board, but they had very small machines out there and wasn't doing a whole lot of coal at that time. That was, I think, somebody might know better than me, but I think it was in the late 70s or early 80s is when they had that plant out there. So
we also had a big wind things out there somewhere out in Montana, but Wyoming now makes 40% of the coal in the United States. It's that big. Back at that time, not so big. 40% of the coal, and it's the low sulfur coal. So you can burn it, or high sulfur, one or the other. I think it's the
low sulfur, low BTU.
Yeah, low BTU. Yeah. Okay, why don't you just pass, go ahead.
Well, I want to correct you on one thing, Mark. The largest stripping drag line is not Big Buck or whatever you call it.
Brutus. I call it Brutus.
Yeah. It's the largest drag line ever built was by Bucyrus, Erie, and it was in Zanesville, Ohio, and it was a 220 cubic yard drag line. You could put 2 or 3 school buses in it. It was humongous.
What was the name of it?
Huh? Big Muskie.
Big Muskie.
Yes. Yes. So that was the largest earth moving ever.
So Bucyrus had 3 plants. So where did they make the big things, middle size and little size?
Well, Evansville was what they called the construction division, and they made the hydraulic machines, the truck cranes, and water well drills. And Erie was similar in the hydraulic shovels and stuff like that. It wasn't quite as big as Evansville. And then South Milwaukee was the main plant for all the mining equipment. That's where all the heavy, big equipment was manufactured, and of course it would have to be manufactured in parts and then sent out to the field to be assembled. So that's what we had.
Anything else? Can you tell us why you even worked at Bucyrus and how it helped you in your life, and how you thought it was a significant part of Evansville?
Well, probably like a lot of guys here, I went to work at Bucyrus because my dad worked there. So, and it was a great place to work. I started out as a machinist, and I worked in the high bay out there on the drills, and went to the light machine shop and run some equipment over there. But it was just it was a great place to work. All the people knew each other and everything. It was kind of like a big family. You know, you knew everybody that lived around the neighborhood, and we grew up together. And I can't tell a story. I think the statute of limitations has run out on it. But I was working on the big drill in the high bay one time. You guys that are machinists will love this story. And I was working third shift, and we had these great big crawler links that just had it had a cord hole in it. It was a casting, so you would drill down through that and drill it to a certain size, and then you would ream it to a finished size. And it was like a 2 or 3 step process. Well, being the genius I was and had been a machinist for probably 6 or 8 months, I knew all the tricks. I stacked about 2 or 3 of them up at a time. I'd bolt them to a table on the floor. Now this drill press was probably 15, 20 foot tall, and I'd bolt them down and everything, and I just put the biggest drill bit we were supposed to use in there, and I'd just feed it real slow. I'd just let it run, because everybody, you know, we were on the incentive, so the more you did, the more you got paid for. So I could pile these things up, put that drill down through there, and then all I had to do was come back and ream them. Well, one night I did that, I got it started, and I could walk around and talk, and I don't know if you guys remember Dick Gold, who was a third shift machine shop foreman. I'd been out walking around, and I was coming back down the aisle, and I saw Dick running back and forth by my machine. And I thought, what the heck's he doing? So I got down closer. Well, that like I think it was a 6 7/8 drill bit, had caught in that link, and it was swinging the whole table that I had him mounted on around. It wasn't drilling, but it was just swinging this whole table around. And he was trying to figure out how to run in there and shut that thing off. And I said, what the hell are you doing, Dick? He said, hey, we got to shut this off. So I went over to the breaker box and turned it off. Hey, he wasn't too happy with me about that. But this one of them things you learn from experience, you know. So, but it was a great place to work. We had a lot of fun. And then I was there, worked in the machine shop for a while, went to the erecting floor, and then I finally went into the field service where I went out and set up machines and troubleshoot and stuff like that. So, but I stayed with Bucyrus till the very end. 2011, we were bought out by Caterpillar, and I was running a shop up in Oakland City for Bucyrus, and we did repairs on the big drag lines and shovels and stuff. And of course, when Caterpillar bought us, they closed all of our shops because they had their dealer network. So I spent about 4 years running around with Caterpillar, and finally they wised up and gave me an early out, so I took it and retired. But it's good to see all the people, tell all the stories. It was just a great place to work, great atmosphere, good people, good pay. One of the best paying jobs you could get in Evansville at the time. So it was just a lot of fun to be a part of, and it still is. So
could you tell us about, they tested the bulldozers out in the parking lot somewhere there. Mark McDonald, did you ever see him test them? Bulldozers and things, he'd ride them around and test them in the back lot somewhere?
Well, I'm not quite that old, Mark. I wasn't there when they made bulldozers.
Okay.
But I know, is it McDonald? I knew a Dave McDonald that worked out there.
Yeah, probably David, yeah.
Yeah, and he was a test operator, and he'd run the cranes and the shovels, and matter of fact, that's what our dad did. He was a test operator as well there on the erecting floor. But yeah, they did a lot of that. It's amazing. Someday they'll dig up when they finally closed that plant. We buried engines and hydraulic pumps and motors out there. There's no telling what all was buried out there behind that thing. So, but yeah, there was everything was built and put together and run and tested, and then they bring it back in, take it apart, paint it, and ship it. So it was a really neat place. We had a lot of innovation there, and had a great product. Bucyrus was one of the best products on the market.
Can you give that to your brother and let him say a few words? Tell us who you are. Tell us your name.
I'm Jerry Cunningham. I'm the oldest of the three Rugrats that our dad started us over there. I worked there from 72 to 82, mostly in the parts shipping department. A little while over on the erecting floor, but there was a lot of time spent over there, a lot of overtime spent in the 70s when we were going great guns. We were working 12 hours a day over there trying to keep up with parts, shipping, emergency parts, and it was a good place to work. Like he said, we made good money, had good friends, and I enjoyed working there. It was one of the little stories that was told, I never will forget. They started building what they called a 65D over there, which was a hydraulic propelled machine. It wasn't mechanical like the B machines. And the oil would get all over the cabs and everything when they were working on it, and they had to take extra care in getting the oil off of the metal before they painted it. Well, when I was over there kind of in the ship painting department, they come in there and got one time and was taking it to Texas. Well, they said it went through the city limit line in Texas with the paint blowing off the front of it. They didn't get it clean good enough before they painted it, so they had to bring it back and repaint it. But a little history, the 88B never changed its basic design from its conception until they quit building it.
What year to what year? What year to, how long was that?
I have no idea. It was built for one of the first ones they built, the B machines.
That's the 88B over there. That's the model Mr. Shankman gave it to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they never changed the basic design of that. They just improved on it a little bit. It was mostly mechanical.
Yeah, you talk about parts, Mr. Cunningham. I've heard so many stories about parts. You had to send parts to Brazil, Europe, everything, and sometimes take 3 months. And these places, they were the machines were not able to work till you got them there. So getting parts to these places was not easy. Can you tell us one story about how hard it was to get parts to somewhere?
Well, we had parts that went overseas that went on a ship or something. We had a special liner paper that we had to put in the box that would keep it moisture down on it to keep it from deteriorating on the way because it would take so long. And then other times we had stuff that we had to crate up and send out to the airport. They flew it. It was emergency stuff. But we were there night and day a lot of times.
One of the ladies we interviewed before, she was in charge of getting stuff out, and she really had a lot of priority on the trains in World War II.
Joanne.
She could tell us a little bit of how she could get priority. I forget her name, but she got...
Joanne Walker, she was the head of the shipping over there, and she was a guru in that department. She got the special permits that had to be for the parts of the machines that would be hauled on the highways, and she would work with the railroads, that when they brought railroads in and we loaded them on the railroad cars, and she did that for years.
She came to all the reunions. I think she's deceased now.
Yes,
but she came to most of the reunions, and she helped with the front table a lot of times.
Yeah.
And she could talk. More than me.
She was a dandy.
Did you ever ship by sea?
River and water.
River down to Ohio or over?
I don't remember that when I was there. They might have. I remember we loaded a 65 B on Par Trucking from Owensboro, the whole upper works without the tracks and everything on it, and hauled it down Claremont, went down Ohio Street and took it to Evansville Material down there. They mounted it on a barge and used it to load and unload barges down there. But they had to take power lines down and everything to get that thing down there all together like that.
There were 12 cranes used at the LST factory during World War II. The last one was by Evansville Marine, and we tried to put it somewhere in Evansville. It's probably the last one of these around in the world, and they just tore it up and went to scrap. We couldn't move it. It was so big, but we can't figure out if it's made by Bucyrus. And but that was one of the 12. They all went by hand signals at the LST plant. Great big cranes, and we don't know if Bucyrus made them or somebody else. All right, give it to Mrs. Wahalen, and her husband was Marvin, and Marvin did work at the plant for a long time, and they got the funny last name from Switzerland, so nobody can pronounce it, but they're nice people, but you can't pronounce their name. Okay. Tell us about Marvin. Get the microphone next to your mouth.
Okay, I'm Darlene Zwallen. It's not all that bad. It scares everybody. Marvin worked at Bucyrus after he got out of the Army in 1956 until July of 82, when he was one of the last ones to leave. He farmed on the side, so he mostly worked second and third shift. He worked in the machine shop. He had a degree in drafting, and he worked in the office for a while, but he went back to the machine shop because with the incentive pay, he could make a lot more money. So he enjoyed his work there, and we still have a lot of good friends who work there. Many of them are already gone. Marvin passed in October of 2021. He had Parkinson's. This is my daughter, my youngest daughter, Marva Meeks. She brought me today. I don't drive anymore. One of the fun stories Marvin always liked to tell was when it snowed on second or third shift, they'd go outside and bring in 5-gallon buckets full of snow and throw snowballs at one another while they were working.
Were they on the clock?
Yes.
I don't think so. Probably, I'm sure he was, yeah.
You got anything to say about Daddy? Okay, all right, next guy. You got to say your whole name, and your daddy worked there, you worked there, and what years your daddy worked, what years you worked.
I'm Victor Hordensky.
Spell it. Rahaland Hodinsky.
My dad worked from, I think, 51 to 82 to the end.
What did he do?
He was a machinist. And I worked there from, it was 76 or 77 to 80. And I worked on the shipping floor. I hired in as a painter at Station 5021. And then I ran a fork truck about everywhere, in every department, until I got laid off for good at 80.
Was that your paint that fell off? He talked about the paint falling off. Was that your paint that fell off?
I worked mostly piece painting, small pieces. I did work on the other end, painting the cranes, but I didn't care much for that, and I got back to the other stuff.
Oh, the paint blew off. He quit.
Did you like Bucyrus? Did it teach you anything?
Yeah, I worked in the hydraulics over there for a while, and that's what I ended up doing afterwards. I retired from Perfection Hydraulics 2 years ago with 40 years.
So you work for Mr. Claimer there. They just sold that. Perfection Hydraulics was over on right by TJ Maxx,
Behind TJ
and he
Maxx.
created that from a company over in Illinois. But hydraulics, my son worked there for 3 months, but hydraulics is so much in everything today. A bulldozer's got, or they got 4 or 5 hydraulics on every of these heavy machinery is hydraulics. So you did a lot of stuff. That was a successful company.
And we also did stuff for the government.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, we worked on the M88, tank retriever. We did a lot of that, all the hydraulics for that.
Brake Supply bought you, I believe, or Cook Brothers, and they are using all.
Brake Supply bought us, as of Christmas, the year before last, they sold out again.
But in their shop, their stuff was probably 50, 60, 70 years old. You couldn't buy this stuff anywhere. It was old, antiquated machinery that helped do things on hydraulics. It was a tremendous plant, bigger than this building.
When Perfection first started, they didn't have a machine shop. Me and my dad, we had a machine shop on a farm, quality work machine, and we did all the machine work. And that's how I got a job at Perfection. So I'm kind of working both places at the same time, Perfection and with my dad.
Yeah.
Until Steve Claimer, the owner, until he bought all the machines and, got going. Then my dad just did a piecework for specialty work.
Yeah.
Hold on. Hey, Victor, talk about your dad being
Back.
your dad being an interpreter.
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
Well,
Interpreter.
Yeah, he was interpreter during the war. My
Well-
dad was in,
no, when he worked at Bucyrus.
yeah, he was an interpreter for some of the guys there that couldn't speak English,
What'd he speak?
Polish, German,
Yeah.
and
English.
he never really talked about it much to us kids.
But he was an interpreter during World War II or during Korean War? Was he interpreter in the Korean War?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
He got out of the service in 50,
I see,
and that's when he started. That's when he came to here, started there,
yeah.
back in 50.
My name is Kenny Luigs. This is my son Blake, my wife Colette. And I want to, first of all, thank you, Dr. Browning, and for getting this all together. We've been coming to these reunions for a long time now. And it's so neat to see all these people. I haven't seen forever. But thank you so much for that. One thing I would like to remember about Bucyrus, Erie is that they had a lot of activities, like after work activities, bowling, they had softball. Wilder, he played with my brother Dennis. Dennis worked at Bucyrus, Erie, my brother Dennis did. He's passed on now. But they played softball. Kenny Fisher, who used to come to our reunions, he's passed on. He played softball as well. There was a lot of fun activities at Bucyrus, Erie we did after hours. This shirt, which I'm going to donate, is my Clabber shirt, and I've had it in my closet for 46 years. And it's a 65D that Jerry was talking about. It's the hydraulic crane that Bucyrus made. And so, I don't know, it's got my name on it and everything, but we had a lot of fun playing Clabber and stuff, and it was a good place to work. Like Steve said, it really paid well. All the incentives worked, and anyhow, I don't have a whole lot to say other than the fact that I'm grateful to be here with you today, and I don't have any stories to tell.
How many years you worked there? What year to what year?
Worked from 1974, right out of high school. I was 18 years old because I figured they'd be around another 100 years. They were in Evansville that long, so I thought, well, I have a career there. And so from 1974 to 1982 when they closed is how long. Then I went to school and took heating and air and got into refrigeration, and I did heating and air and refrigeration for the biggest part of my career. But back in the day, that was Roman Shank that did that. He worked on the assembly floor. Roman Shank, he was a guy that built that, like you were saying. So
He was on the west side, and his wife and family gave it to us, and they came out and toured 10 years ago. But he spent a long time making that 88B.
yeah, that was quite a dragline. That was I think that was her signature machine right there. That 88B was. So, but a lot of good memories, and it was a good place to work. Had 13 paid holidays. I still remember 13 paid holidays. I had, well, of course I wasn't there long enough to get a whole lot of paid vacation, but like after 25 years, you got like 5 weeks, and after 30 years, you got 6 weeks of paid vacation on top of the 13 paid holidays.
Which shop were you at?
Oh, machine shop. Yes.
My name's Richard Gibson. I worked out at Bucyrus, as everybody else did here. I started out in the machine shop as a radio arm drill operator, and then I operated screw machines, and my wife's dad worked out there as a radio arm drill operator too. He retired from there. He had 25 years, probably 25 years out there. And
What was his name?
Gillis Simmons. And I never had a bad day going in there to work. There was always something going on. Somebody was doing something, or some kind of joke being played on somebody else or something like that. I remember one Christmas Eve. We worked back then, you worked Christmas Eve. You got Christmas Day off, but you worked Christmas Eve. And I was running the
radio arm drill at that time. And I was working away, running parts, stuff, everything. And all of a sudden I looked around and the whole place is quiet. Nobody's doing anything. I didn't see anybody. Everybody had disappeared. And I thought, I wonder what the heck's going on. So I shut the drill off and started looking around for them. Well, I found them all in Mac McCoy's office, and they were all about drunk as skunks. Yeah, there wasn't any lack of whiskey. I'm telling you, it was there in plenty. And I worked there in the machine shop and that stuff. And they said, well, we didn't want to tell you because you hadn't been here very long. We didn't know what you do. I said, man, I don't care if you want to drink. You're the supervisor on third shift. I don't care. If it's okay with you. It's definitely all right with me. And so I went from there over into maintenance. And I worked in maintenance for all the rest of my time. And I had 22 and a half years out of Bucyrus and loved every day of it. There was always something, like I said, going on out there. And got over there and I was working one day, it was a winter, in the winter. And this is when they were trying to switch over to gas and use it in the plant. And if they went to this mixing unit, they didn't have to go around and re-orifice everything in the plant that operated off of gas because it drew air in and made it the same specific gravity as natural gas was. So I was out there laying in it, the middle of winter, and I had to put plyboard up around the fence, keep from freezing. It was so damn cold. And I worked on that damn thing, and what would do, the pilot light would get blown out. So I took that pilot light off in there, and Lee Hicks, supervisor, and I took it in the shop, and I said, Lee, you care what I do to fix this thing? He said, no, I don't care. I said, well, I'm going to drill that orifice out in that son of a gun, and if it ever shuts down again, it'll be because it's gone out of business. And I drilled a hole in that thing, and it looked like a bolt cord when I put it back there. It never went out again. I didn't have to work on it again. It stayed operating in that. But we all had so much fun. We had a shipment in the dead of winter we were getting when we were using coal, and that burned it in the power plant to make steam to go over into the plant. Well, we'd get this coal in, and it'd be in coal cars by the trains when we could finally get it, because the miners had gone on strike. So they had to get this coal from some other states and brought it in. Well, it was over the dumpster where you dumped it, and then it got conveyed up into the hopper bins above the power plant, and then down into the boiler. And so they couldn't get it loose. It was so frozen in that box, in that coal car. So what we did is we had the yard crane come over and pick up the backhoe with Earl Wittenheimer on it and stuck it up in the middle of the coal car. And he operated that backhoe at one end to break the one end loose to get it to go down into the hopper. And then when he got ready to turn, we'd pick it back up with the outside crane again and turn it around, put him down the other end so he could work the other end loose on that thing. It was, sometimes you wonder why things didn't happen to kill somebody. I'm telling you, we had a degreasing machine installed and put in there, and you could go by that thing and degrease anything you wanted to degrease. They were making some update changes in that and stuff. And if a cat or a skunk, you didn't stick your hands down in it. because the stuff would eat the flesh off your hands. Or if an animal got in there, it just dissolved it. There wasn't anything left. So we weren't putting that thing in, and luckily, he didn't stay too long, which I think made a lot of people happy. And but I was working down in the powerhouse one time, and it was in the wintertime. I was working on pumps and that stuff over it, underneath the powerhouse. And it was real warm and moist down there. And I was trying to repack these pumps and set the packing on. Well, pretty soon, here's Lee Hicks over there. He's shaking me and said, Richard, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'd gone off to sleep. Down in there, probably slept about 2 hours. Here, I'll give him somebody else. I got much more.
Okay. So I'm Paul Metcalf, and I started in 1974 also, right after 6 years of service in the Air Force as a linguist. And this is one of the guys that I got to work with in maintenance, dispatching all over the place. Lee Hicks and Estel Stuckey and Joe Corey and Tom Vermel. Then from there, I went up into part sales, and that was a wonderful venture with Harold Grace. I don't know if anybody remembers that name or not, but he was the guru with all the books going way back to the beginning. And then I went down to shipping and worked with Steve Page's brother Tom, and got to take parts to the airport for units that were stuck on a bridge in Canada during the Christmas break. But we got them going again. Wherever they had to go, we got the parts to them. I finished up in part sales, and we went up to Erie, Pennsylvania, and looked around for 3 days. And it was in March. We could find no reason why we wanted to live in Erie, especially in March. So we came back here and started a new career. But a wonderful 8 years of time there at Bucyrus. And Jack Kimber was my cousin who worked over in welding. And he was a quiet man, but a big, strong man. And that was typical of what I saw with the workers in Bucyrus area. They were capable, and they could get the job done. Great memories.
My name's Don Schneider.
Stand up.
I worked there during Merle Marks's reign. Merle Marks is the plant manager. And Merle and I lived about 3 miles from one another. And I don't know how we got to be buddies, but we did. And they made a movie of the big machine they built down in Kentucky. And they made a movie of it from the construction of it and the operation of it. And he'd asked me if I would, he told me if I would take these around to different organizations who wanted something for their, for their meetings to take up time. So I would go around to different meetings and show this movie and give a little talk, a little bit of stuff about it. Anyway, I started in export parts. Well, I started in interpreting. And interpreting is where you get the parts orders, and the orders come in reference numbers. And the reference number, of course, only points out a certain part of a certain place. And that doesn't mean that every machine is going to have the same parts, because they have different sizes and tubes or whatever it might be. And so I started out doing that. And from there I went to export parts and shipment. And I worked for Harold Pupper. And we sent parts all over the world. What we do is fight with the local people trying to get our parts for our orders, our shipments. And we ship parts all over the world. And so basically we had to get the parts together, and they would be packaged up and said, be wrapped in some tar paper and really wrapped in boxed in real tough cardboard, lumber boxes. And basically, I guess that's it. I didn't work there too awfully long, but I had a lot of fun there. It was a good place.
What year to what year did you work there?
Well, March.
I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
I'd have to look it up.
I'm Jim Schmidt. I was a school teacher, so I didn't work at Bucyrus. But my father did. He went to Evansville Business College, and when he got out of there, he got a job at Surveyll. He stayed with Surveyll till it went down, and then he went to Ryan Construction and convinced them that they needed a purchasing department, and that's what he spent his entire career in purchasing. And when they kind of cut back, he went to Trailer Brothers, and then Trailer Brothers, I think they're still in existence, but they changed direction. You always talk about Mr. Ferris there when he was left, and that's when he lost his job, and that's when he went to Bucyrus. He worked there from 1962 to 1976 when he retired.
My name is Steve Page. I was connected with Bucyrus, Erie in 3 locations. When I was in high school, my dad worked at Bucyrus, Erie in Erie, PA. So I had that experience in Erie, Pennsylvania, and not wanting to live there again. Then we moved to Milwaukee, and while I was in college, I worked at Bucyrus, Erie, out in the plant, and I watched the largest machine ever built go through that plant. So that was about 1961. Big Muskie, as they call it. So I then went into the service for a period of time, and I came back and ended up working at Bucyrus Erie in Milwaukee. And I did that until from 68 to 1972. In 72, they thought it would be nice if Steve Page and a bunch of other folks went from Milwaukee down to Evansville. And come on down. And there was a lot of problems going on at Bucyrus, or at least perceived to be problems, in the supervisory of Bucyrus here in Evansville. And they literally replaced every superintendent, if you recall, back in 1972 is when they did that. And sent all those superintendents, they didn't fire them, they just demoted them and brought in new leadership. Well, I was not one of the superintendents at that time. In fact, I came down and worked with Howard Bliffick. He's the HR guy, and was with him for a couple of years. And I was really in the management program at that time with Bucyrus. So they would pop me here and pop me there and every different places. Well, the exposure I had was I was on the assembly floor as assistant superintendent for a period of time. And that was unique, watching that piece of equipment drag it out and descend it down the road. And the only remembrance I have about the working on the assembly area, I was not an assembler, I was a supervisor. But the last place that a piece of equipment was placed at Bucyrus here in Evansville was on the assembly floor. And I can recall one of the big trucking firms, he came in from in an evening shift, came in and loaded an 88B, the very machine that's sitting right there, loaded the 88B onto a trailer. And they drove it down kind of the black roads of Indiana and Kentucky, because if they could deliver a piece of equipment completely assembled, they got paid for it as if it was not assembled. And that was the key to trying to outfox the state police. And that happened quite often. I mean, Wilder Allen could attest to those very issues that I'm just telling you about. So from that point, I went on then to be the superintendent of the fabricating welding department. I will tell you this, I know very little about fabricating and welding, but that wasn't the point. That wasn't my job. My job wasn't to weld. It was to supervise people that were in that area. And so I took great pride in having an opportunity to meet many, many, many outstanding employees at Bucyrus Erie in my time frame with them. And there was one lady, Esther. Esther was a welder, a carryover from World War II. You remember Esther? Some of you do probably. And she worked for me at that time, and that was just like, oh my God, it was like having somebody with the talent she had. It was very, very rewarding. Remember Harry Red Kuykendall? That name familiar? He was one of my supervisors. Outstanding guy. And there's a guy who ran a shear machine in the plate and weld department. Do you ever remember a guy that I can draw a blank on him right now? I should have written his name down. Malcolm King. You talk about piecework. You all got, if you were an hourly employee, you got paid piecework, right? You're right. Okay, well, Malcolm was the most talented guy I ever met. He would be so far ahead on his orders, he'd just hide them under his workstation, and then he'd turn them in. I mean, he was making really good money. And it's neat because I ran into Malcolm's son, Bert King, and I've run into other people at Bucyrus, from Bucyrus, either as the sons and daughters of an individual, but the uniqueness is, and I just ran into Paul again after 40-some years at being away from Bucyrus, and he and I belong to the same Kiwanis Club. It's really kind of a neat connection that we had with Bucyrus Erie. So I don't look back on any of it. I eventually decided to go into business, and I owned an investment business for 35 years here in Evansville. So that was what I completed my work with, but I enjoyed my 10 years at Bucyrus Erie because I worked in Milwaukee, I lived in Erie, and I came here. And by the way, Bucyrus Evansville was built in 1911. Bang.
My name's Tom Emmer. Went to Bucyrus Erie for my 20th birthday. Went to a few places in the office. Went to Erie, retired on my 42nd birthday. Put 20 years in between. I don't have any really weird stories to tell because all these guys did it before I got there. So I think that's enough for me.
How'd you like Erie? Did you like Erie?
No. Worst mistake I ever made. I should have left my family and went up on part-time up there and come back and forth. But I learned a few things. I learned to be careful. I should have watched what the other people weren't doing either, and they weren't going.
How big was that plant? Was it bigger than Evansville or Milwaukee or about the same size?
Oh, small. Back here again, I didn't really get out too much of the plant because the plant was way over there, and our office was way over there. So I don't think I really, until they cut the office out up there, I never was in the plant. When they closed the main office in Erie, they transferred all those people to the shop area down there. It was gone. Thank you.
That's all right. I just want to add, everybody's bad-mouthing Erie, and I went to high school in Erie. It was called Dreary Erie, the mistake by the lake.
I'm Wilder Allen. I was at BE from 76 to 81. I was one of the first people that got the goodbye after my boss visited Milwaukee and came back and said, well, I've got to let somebody go. It's either you or me, and I get to make the decision. So my job there was to keep people in the plant safe. Didn't work with Malcolm. Malcolm was making a really good rate, and he had a piece of steel go in his leg and hit a vein. And he was telling the guy next to him, that's when I hold my finger here, release it, it squirts blood out. So he took his belt off and put a tourniquet on it, and we kept on working because he was making good rate. And he was going to wait to go see Joanne, the nurse, until lunchtime, so he didn't lose the rate. But and working in HR for Liffig, and with Jenny Snyder and Dolly Waller. Does anybody know anything about Dolly? What she had, what she did? Yeah. Last I knew, she was working at Astar when it was still Astar. Yeah, she was a greeter. You knew a lot about what went on when you worked in HR. and I guess I'm just going to tell one humorous story. They had the executive dining room. Now, I live close to the plant, and I'd gone home for lunch, and when I came back, there was fire trucks all over the plant. And out in the plant, a quench oven caught on fire, and the fire department came to put that out. Well, our fire brigade didn't work for me, they worked for Tom Verbal in maintenance. And when I was going in the plant to see what was going on, I was heading out that way, and Don Bryant was heading the other way, and all he said was, "In my office in 5 minutes." So I had to find out what was going on. Well, they run a fire hose out, which hadn't been inspected in probably 10 years, and they run it out, and in the executive dining room, Bryant took the staff to go out and watch the fire brigade put the fire out. Well, they were all standing there, and they had about 100 foot of hose that was rotten, and when they turned it on, it split along the side, and Bryant and all the people that went out there with him were soaking wet. And I didn't feel bad about going to see him in 5 minutes because they didn't work for me. But I inherited the fire brigade at that time from Tom Verbal. So it was Tom's group because the two of us caught it. But there's a lot of stories, and I've shared a lot with everybody already, so I'll pass it on. Who's over here?
My name is Barbara Myers. I started working at Bucyrus on May 2nd. May the 2nd, 1955. I worked there for 4.5 years. In September of '59, I married Ralph Myers, who had been there since 1941. He spent little time in the service. He was drafted, was in the service till the war was over, and came back. Worked there until they closed in '82. So even though I wasn't working there, I was still highly connected. I was also connected because my grandpa worked there, I had uncles worked there, I had cousins worked there. I got my job through school. At that time, they placed the students in down jobs when they, and I was at Bucyrus as a teletype operator. My husband's 3 brothers worked there also, so knew a lot of people there. That's about it.
What's your maiden name for your family working there?
Hape.
Hape. Yeah. Back over here.
One thing, when I left Bucyrus, I went to Siggyco. Siggyco had a rule, they did not hire relatives. So I had a hard time dealing with that because when I worked at Bucyrus, Erie, you had grandfather, father, grandsons usually in the plant. So if you made one person mad, you made a lot of people mad in the family. But it was really hard, because I know Jerry came to Siggyco, and nobody in his family could come in, after that. There was a lot of people that they did not hire because of the relatives, but Bucyrus wasn't that way. You knew Vinnie Snyder, and he knew everybody in your family. Mostly everybody was going to get a job there eventually.
One more thing. After 20 years as a stay-at-home mom, I also got a job at Siggyco. And many of the people, when the plant closed, they got hired at Siggyco.
You want this?
Recently, I went to the kitchen where the fire was, and a guy's over on the west side, I forget his name, he's a Shriner, but he was gonna give us 7 air conditioners for this place. So we went up on, he had all these big air conditioners, but they're about 30 years old, so we didn't take them because they would have been more problem. But it was where the old kitchen was, and this building was sort of in the front of the place, but it's well built. He was called Mr. Fix-It on the west side. He had what's that guy's name? He had the car shop. You would know him, Mr. Cunningham, Steve.
Moose Lewis.
Lewis, his name's Lewis, his son. So Lewis, the son, owned that building, and when we were getting this, going to get this air conditioner, he just put a new roof, a rubber roof. He did it himself. So we were walking around on the roof, and I brought 2 or 3 guys from here. But that building was built so well. It was unbelievable. But he told me this story, and I got part of it right, part of it wrong. But he said this one guy came over and talked to him. He was an older guy. He probably isn't one of you, but he said, he started telling this story that he ran into this lady, and he liked this lady at the cafeteria. And so he sort of fell in love with her, but he also had a wife. So he had to, you know, he said the wife didn't let him go back there or something. So he said he just never knew what happened to that lady. He loved that lady the rest of his life, but he never knew what happened to her. And I don't know who knows that story, but that cafeteria was 2 floors high. It was a building, and the second floor was cafeteria, but that thing was built better than, I mean, that building was really built well. So it's for sale if you know somebody wants it, I think. Yeah. Sadie was her name. Well, he said she was pretty, I think. Maybe not. Okay, well, anyway, Sadie was the lady's name. I don't know who the guy's name was. That you? No.
The best pies.
The best pies, okay. All right, here you go. Okay.
Well, my name is Pat Greenfield, and I started in May of 1956. And I stayed there for a few years till I was married and had children. I didn't really know a lot of the fellows in the shop because I worked in the office. I worked with Cliff Townsend, and I think everybody knew Cliff.
Microphone.
But I paid the bills and audited expense records, and I actually worked with Al Thompson, who was our plant controller at the time. But I also bowled, and I still have my pin. We're getting over 250. But I didn't know a lot of the fellows, but when I bowled, I had 3 fellows from out in the shop, and we had a blast.
Franklin
bowling lanes, you betcha. Yeah. I've still got my bowling ball and got my shoes, but I'm not sure if I could do it or not, because I'm getting up there. But I keep busy, and it's sure good to see everybody here. But I did pay the bills, and they were some doozies, I can tell you that. Here you go.
You bowl with Eddie Lynn?
Eddie Lynn,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Eddie Lynn. That's when we got #1 spot.
My name is Gail Hawkins. I'm with the Bucyrus Erie Luncheon, and I'm calling to tell you that we made it! Yay! I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm so happy to see there are some guys here today that are from the past when I first started working with Bucyrus Erie and everything. I went to Wrights High School at one end of Claremont, and in '56 I graduated from there and walked down to the other end of Claremont and went to work in August of '56 at Bucyrus Erie. I really didn't walk, but
We graduated together.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've been together for all these years, and we still meet once a month for lunch with some other girls we graduated with.
Yes, we do.
We stick together. Back to Bucyrus Erie work. I had a brother-in-law that worked there in this shop, and he said, go talk to Benny Snyder. He said, I'm going to tell Benny Snyder you're coming. You're my sister-in-law, and he better hire you because you're really good. I said, okay. So I went, and sure enough, I was interviewed the first part of the week, and he wanted to know if I could come in and get acquainted with some of the people I'd be working with on Friday. I said, I guess so, which I did. And I started out in the blueprint room. Wonderful place, kind of stinky at times because they had the bruning machine, I think it's called. It ran off all the blueprints that went in the travelers that traveled with the equipment as it went through the shop. And when they got through, they stuck them back in that traveler and sent them back to me again, but they were sure in bad shape, some of them. You threw them away or else if they were okay, then you filed them back again. And I worked with Dorothy Phillips and Millie. Yeah, Dorothy and yeah, okay. I told you it was a while ago, but I'm sure you remember. Anyway, I worked with two older ladies, and they really filled me in on a lot of stuff about Bucyrus, Erie, and everything. I really enjoyed working with them. I thought it was the most wonderful job. And then they wanted me to go up to the parts department. And I hated to leave that job, but I went up to the parts department, and by golly, I found my home right away. I love the parts department. Those people up there, I was a baby in the family, and both my sisters were grown by the time I was married. So these were my sisters and my brothers in this department. It was a good department. I started out just typing quotes and taking care of consignment stock. We had dealers all over the United States, evidently, that stocked our parts, and they would take them on consignment so that they would be closer out into the areas where they were needed. And I kept track of that kind of thing. And then finally, the secretary's job became open, and Frances Reuter was the parts manager at that time. And they wanted to know if I would like to be secretary to the parts manager. It kind of scared me because he was little, but he was a firecracker. I mean, if he got mad at you, you got laid out. Anyway, I got the job. I liked him, and he was very nice and very polite to me. And I don't have fingers and toes probably enough to count how many parts managers I worked for, because it seemed like every time that someone was going to get the axe if the budget was bad, the parts manager left. So started there in August of '56. I took time out to have a daughter in '65 and stayed not working there for a few years. And then they called and said my job was open again, because at the time that I was pregnant, they didn't have this maternity leave and all that stuff. You were terminated, and if you wanted to come back into the company, you could go in and fill out an application and everything, which I thought, I'll probably do that one of these days. Well, I didn't have to worry, because one of my former parts managers was back in as a parts manager, and he called and wanted to know if I'd like to have my old job back. That the girl that took my job was pregnant and she was leaving, so they were looking for another lady. So at that time, I went back to work and worked then until they closed in '82. So between my two stints, I was just 2 years short of getting my 25-year watch. Was there for 23 years, and loved it. And I also joined the bowling league with Barbara Myers back here. She and I needed one bowled, and they came up to the parts department and wanted to know if we wanted to bowl. And I said, I have never bowled. They said, we'll teach you. They were desperate because they had one lady and 3 guys on each team. And so we agreed to do that. And we did. We went on, I think it was downtown or on Franklin.
Franklin Bowling.
No, Franklin's. It was on Franklin Street upstairs over at the grocery store.
Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
Rose Bowl, burnt down. It's on the 2nd floor.
Right, on the 2nd floor. And so one of the guys, he would come up there and he would teach. He taught us how to bowl. I got most improved the first year I bowled. I had no place to go but up, so lucky me. But it was really an experience, and you're right, it was like a family. I mean, us ladies in the parts department, we didn't get enough of each other 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. We would be together with each other over the weekend doing something. Gloria Wallace had a pool, one of the few people that I knew at that time that had a pool. And we loved to go out to her house on the weekend because at the pool we could swim. We went to Opryland we went to Opryland and took several of us and spent the weekend. Barbara and I had never been outside probably the city limits hardly, and we went down south on a week's vacation, and it was wonderful. We had a good time. So it was like a family, and I think I really made a wise decision when I decided I don't think I want to go to Erie, especially since I started to say I did meet my husband. He was in the maintenance department. Most of you know Hawk or Hawkeye, Dale Hawkins. He was my husband for 35 years. We went together for 2 years, and he finally passed away in 2012. But he was a character, and I loved every moment of my life that I had with him.
What did he propose to you at?
He didn't propose to me at your house.
What were you doing on the back steps of my house?
I think you don't have any need to know what we did back there. No, that's where I got my first kiss. And then I got in my car and turned out the lights and took off, and he couldn't find me. I didn't want him following me home.
There's another person I wanted to mention, and I imagine everybody.
Microphone.
Everybody will remember this person, Virginia Hudson.
Oh, yeah.
Nossick, she married. And the last time I saw Jenny, she was in a rest home, and she had lost all the weight, and you would not have known her. And but Eddie Lynn was on my bowling team. We count him number first. Anyway, I had to mention her name because she's the first person that I worked with in 1956. And it was in the blueprint room. And then I got transferred. So, there you go.
She mentioned Mr. Reuter. Mr. Reuter lived behind Colonial Lanes. That was on the east side of town. But he used to, my grandparents would play cards with him, and he was a short guy, but his son was in my class, Bob. But he was, I guess, in charge of parts or something, but he's a nice guy. His son's a stockbroker on the east side. I think it's Thomas Reuter. But they had about 10 kids or something. But he was a nice fellow, and what you said, he was a good boss. Now, we got Mr.
I've got an antique that happens that I could tell.
Say your name again.
Jerry Cunningham again. I was working evening shift over in the parts department, and somebody kept telling me that there was a guy over in the machine shop building a cannon. And I said, what? Well, you know, we had drill pipe over there that the wall on it was really thick. And so I walked over there one evening when I had a little time, and he was sure enough building this cannon. He had wheels on it. Barrel was about 2 foot long. And I said, when you get ready to test fire that thing, let me know. I'll come out to your house and watch. He says, I'm going to test fire it here when I get done with it. I said, oh, okay. Well, about a week later, the fellow that's driving the fork truck over there for us come running up to me and says, he's getting ready to fire that cannon. So I went over there in the machine shop, and he had it strapped down with a chain come along to, remember those big welding tables they had that had about an inch thick steel plate top on them? Well, he had it chained down to that. And I noticed there was some shotgun shells laying there. And I said, what kind of powder did you put in that thing? Well, I used that shotgun. I said, you shouldn't have done that. If any of you know anything about powder, shotgun shells nowadays, they have a fast burning powder. He should have put black powder in that cannon. Well, he put the powder in it, and that thing went off. It lifted that table about 2 foot off the ground, and it went through the back door, a hole in that steel door, and hit one of them steel dumpsters out back. Did you ever hear about it? No. Oh, okay. That's a good thing you didn't. Well, we couldn't hear anything for about 2 or 3 hours after that.
We got one more guy named Mr. Steckler.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, Mr. Steckler's from outside the Fort Branch area. His daughter's running the Sullenberger Aviation Museum. That's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Remember that Scully that landed that plane on the Hudson, the Miracle on the Hudson? They have that plane. They took it apart and put it there. It's in their museum there. So if you ever get to Charlotte, North Carolina, it's in the old Wells Fargo hangar. I've been there once. It's probably twice the size of this hangar, but his daughter's now running that place. But you got any statements here for us about Bucyrus, Mr. Stecker? Mr. Stecker.
Yeah, our daughter is the president and CEO of the museum. Well, I worked for Bucyrus Erie right at 9 years until they closed. But while I was at Bucyrus Erie, I started out, I went to Bucyrus Erie, I had a Chilmondite background. So they hired me and I started out running a deflate jig mill. Did that for a while. And then they had a opening come in the machine shop. So being as I had a, government certified tool and die training, I applied for that because that kind of put me back in my home base again. Well, that generated the most grievances that was ever filed with Bucyrus Erie because that particular job was always seniority, And anyway, it went through the process, and I got put on. I think it was just an experiment, really. So I did that for a while, and then Bob Kressel was the supervisor over there, and they moved him somewhere else. So I think to calm things down, they made me the supervisor of the machine shop, or the tool room. So I worked there for a good while, and then they moved me over to the hydraulic shop, and I supervised the hydraulic shop for a good while. And then Mac McCoy got moved out of the machine shop, so they moved me over to take his place. Did that for a while, and then Will Slicker retired, so they made me the anyway, I just kept moving around, and so I stayed with Bucyrus Erie until they shut the door, and then I went with Continental EBSCO, worked with them, had a good time with them, and then of course that went by the wayside, and so from there I went to Alcoa. Spent 25 years up there, supervising the machine shop and the roll shop. So, they never did figure out what I could do.
Thank you so much. And just to mention Bob Kressel, he helped start this helped do a lot of things, but I would talk to him and he said not everybody liked me because I think he was in charge of time management. So he was around checking to see if you were on time. He said, I don't think everybody liked me because he was on their case all the time. But he's a woodworker and he helped do a lot of things with Bucyrus, and him with the other ones that helped start this reunion, we'll be all grateful for. Now, if there's anybody else who wants to say a few comments, I'm sure some people forgot some things. Let's go ahead and let some other people start and we'll get the movie on them. Yeah.
Just want to say one thing. When I worked there, I like to eat, so I'd always go in the cafeteria. And in the cafeteria on the end, they had this display case glass. They had all the pie in there, and I like pie. So there was always a fly or two in the pie. So I said, you have to look at the pie. You have to chew the pie to see if it's big raisin pie or custard pie.
Oh, that gear up there you see on that Bucyrus Erie, Marvin's Wallen, that's what Marvin did. He was a gear cutter down there at Bucyrus Erie, and that was a real skilled position.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Say before everybody leaves, take a little time and go back and look at the Vietnam display unit back there. I'm part of that display. I spent a year in Vietnam with him, was a ranger over there, and there's a bunch of newspaper articles in, and I'm in the one called the Six-Man War. It was printed here in Evansville. So just, there's a lot of interesting things back there. If you do, take the time and go back and look it over.
Those cases, there are 5 of them back there, but they were given to us. They were at the Reserve Center here on Lloyd for about 20 years. A guy named Dave Cates and a guy named C. Larry Rhodes gave it to the Reserve Center. C. Larry Rhodes is on every bus stop in the city. And so if you look at the bus stop, it says C. Larry Rhodes Insurance, okay? That was C. Larry, and Cates, he was the manager of Sandy's, a hamburger joint for a while. And you know, he could do about 200 chin-ups during that time. Later on, he owned an eye clinic later. But they gave us these 2 cabinets, and they'd been in the Reserve Center for probably 25 years. They gave it to the guy. So we went over there, and I ran into Cates. He says, well, we'll give those to you. I said, that's fine. And so we went over to the Reserve Center, and the commanding officer is about this tall, okay? And he was in charge of the reserve, and C. Larry Rhodes is that tall. And the commander says, I don't know if I want to give these to you. And C. Larry Rhodes says, I think you want to give them to me. And then he says, I know the governor. I know the head of the Army Reserves in Indiana. I think you want to give them to me. That guy kept being resistant. Finally, by the time the day was over, that commanding officer typed up all the referrals, and C. Larry Rhodes walked out with the cabinets and put them up here. But that was old C. Larry. I don't know if you know him, but that troops that he's talking about, that troop, Mr. Stecker didn't say enough about it. They are the absolutely most decorated unit, reserve unit in all of Vietnam. These guys came out of helicopter, they skydived, helicopters, everything else. They were an unbelievable unit. Remember, most reservists, you're in the back row, getting in the refrigerator and doing other things. Well, these guys got in the front row, and they were in the front row for all that time, and they were our absolute most decorated of all of Vietnam, which is a big deal, and he didn't talk about that. One thing to go back in time, if you go to back during Korean War, you might know Mr. Mitzeldorf. He worked at industrial contractors, but there was a bunch of guys, and another guy taught it at Central High School, but they were in the Chosin Reservoir. So they were 160 of them about here, got a reserve unit, and they thought they were going to be in the back row. They were in the middle of Chosin Reservoir. Let me tell you about Chosin Reservoir. There's 90,000 Chinese and North Koreans around you. There's 10,000 troops in the center. It's 30 below zero, 30 below. And these guys escaped. And that's when you hear Memorial Day, the Chosin Reservoir. Very few people get out of it, just like what happened to Mr. Stecker. So those are 2 pretty important things that happened to reserves here in Evansville, and people, very few of them know it. Other comments today? I can't thank you enough for coming here. The only thing I ask of you is that you got an attic, you got a garage, and you got junk in there. And you start looking in there, and when you find something of memorabilia from either Bucyrus or Alcoa or another company you worked at, or something about your mom or dad or grandpa or grandfather or aunt or uncle, you get it out here to us. And then our next reunion is August 4th. It's going to be at Eaglehart Gardens. That's next to Harrison High School. We had it there about 4 or 5 years ago, and we have it, it's going to go from 11 to 2, and they'll give us a garden tour, and we'll have a little talk before and lunch, and it's already set up as of yesterday. August 4th, we'll send you, Mrs. Hawkins doesn't forget very much, so she'll make sure you got her phone, he's got your phone number and email, and then you tell some other people, we'd like other people there. They're not limited, and they put you on these carts and drive you around this garden. Right now it's 28 acres, and it's going to be a destination place, right? So it's got plenty of plenty of beautiful things. So all of you are welcome there. We did it a few years ago, but we'd love to have you. And thank you for all your work with Bucyrus and being part of Evansville. Thanks.
I just wanted to say, if any of you change your email, your cell phone, get rid of your landline, any way that I have to get a hold of you, please let me know. And also, I would appreciate it if maybe if you see where somebody from Bucyrus has passed away, that you might let me know. Used to, I could see it in the paper in obituaries, but hardly anyone puts anything in the obituaries anymore, it seems like. And someone I hear, talked about Don Bryant, who used to be plant manager at Bucyrus. He did pass away in 24. I can't read, it seems to me like it was September, and he was in North Carolina. So please help me. Don't lose contact with me. You should have my number on your cell phone, or just call Mark. He has my number.
Now, Keith Benedict, remember, he was part of this. Keith Benedict, his wife, we interviewed them. I put them on YouTube. She and him were the oldest Marine couple from World War II. His name is Keith Benedict, and his wife. They had apartments. They had an apartment building right behind the old North High School. And I'd go there and interview her. And she was smart as a whip, but there are not many women Marines, but she was one of the oldest women Marines, and he was too, the oldest couple. And it was Keith Benedict, and his son actually helped bring a P-47 here in 1986, and they rebuilt it until 97, and then it burned up in a hangar. They got it out of a lake in Florida. That was a tremendous tragedy. They brought it up here, and they worked on it for 15 years, and then it burnt up. I think I died of depression. So now, Mr. Cunningham's given us these hats, so Mr. Jerry's going to pass one to the first table there. And we have one for this table. Mr. Cunningham, Stephen gave it to us, and then you've got a debate on who gets it, okay? Give it to that table, and then give one to this table, and then we've got 3 belt buckles, and these are all compliments of Mr. Steve, and he's not charging. And this is is that a 388B, or what, is that one? What is this on the belt buckle?
That's a dragline.
What is it?
Looks like an 88.
It's 88B, maybe. Okay, it's not an 88B, it's a 55-2. You put one at each table, and then you've got to decide who gets that, okay? Whoever wants all this memorabilia. Now,
That's a big mining.
a big mining shovel, okay, on the belt, so you can wear that belt buckle and everybody be impressed with you. So, all right, well, thanks again. Now, you can tour the museum if you want to tour. I got a doctor's appointment at 2 o'clock, so I leave here at 1:27. But I'll be glad to show you around the museum if you want. If you don't want, that's fine. Love to have you, but you got to get a hold of me, and I'll walk you around and show you important things. If you don't, that's fine. Thanks for coming. Don't be strangers. Have your grandkids come here. Thank you.
Passed away last 2 years ago. My brother. Oh, really took good care of him. She retired, so she did take care of him. And, yes, yeah. So she wanted me to tell you that.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.